Hello and welcome. We've got about 67 people coming in so far. We're going to give it another 2 or 3 minutes just to let folks get in, get comfortable, get that last drink of water, and we will promptly begin at 12:03 p.m. just to give everybody a chance to get in. And while we're waiting, we'd love to hear from you all. So use the chat to tell us where you're coming in from, where you're joining from, and what sort of work that you do. Wonderful. We've got a lot of victim advocates. Those are my people. Thank you for joining. We've got some folks from tribal communities. Welcome. Thank you. We've got folks from human trafficking, victim witness, AmeriCorps, shelter management, Tallahassee. That was my old home for many years. Welcome. We've got Virginia. That's where I'm at now. So welcome to my fellow Commonwealthers. We've got some folks coming in from California. Wonderful. Thank you all for I guess, getting up early and joining us. We've got a lot of victim assistance, a lot of case managers, SANE, Rape Crisis Center. Wonderful. I love seeing where everyone's coming in from. We appreciate the work you do, and you're taking the time out to join us. We've got about 250 folks joining us so far. So we'll go ahead and get started. As I said earlier, welcome everyone. My name is Rachel Gibson, and I'm with the National Center for Victims of Crime. I represent our Center for Serving Victim Service Professionals. And when we say victim service professionals, we mean anyone who is going to help a victim of crime along their journey. We know that victims of crime may not always get to an advocate or law enforcement, but they may be talking to their banker about the financial fraud that they're experiencing. They may reach out to a community-based organization. They may be a youth who is talking to someone at the Boys and Girls Club. And so anyone who supports a victim of crime, whatever that crime may be, along their journey, we provide you all with resources, supports, and trainings just like today. And so for those of you who are unsure of what's this webinar or this panel discussion going to be about, we're going to talk about financial fraud and youth and young adults, what to know to provide services. And before we dive into the panel discussion, we're going to do some housekeeping things. First, this is being recorded. So just for your own sort of privacy and safety in mind, be mindful of what you put in the chat. We will make sure that you get a copy of this recording. We'll also provide an evaluation. And I also have a resource list that we've put together that we will share with you all in the coming weeks. Unfortunately, we cannot provide certificates, but wanted you to know that if you have any sort of connectivity or any of those issues, reach out to us and let us know. For those of you who may need it, we have live transcription at the bottom of the screen. You'll click on, I believe it's the More button, and you'll be able to turn that on should you need that. If you have any questions today, because this is a sort of discussion, we want you to engage with us. And so if you have any questions, we ask you to put that in the Q&A. And if you want to just sort of chit chat with us, use the chat function. The Q&A option is going to really help us sort of identify really important questions and be able to sort of track the conversation. So again, if you have any questions, please use that Q&A function. Don't put that in the chat because we may lose your question. So let's sort of paint the picture for today. Why is this conversation even important? According to a 2018 study performed by the Javelin Strategy and Research Organization, 2/3 of all identity theft victims were under age 8. And according to that same study, they found that teens were more likely at risk of a data breach than adults. We know that children, teens, and young adults are often left out of these conversations because folks don't think that they're spending money, they're making money, they don't think that they need to sort of be a part of this. But what we know to be true is that financial literacy is important. Understanding what fraud, exploitation, and abuse looks like is important for all sorts of people, whether they are youth and young adults or adults. And we should be bringing them into these conversations. When we talk about who can be a victim of crime, especially financial fraud, youth and young adults, again, are often sort of made to feel like their ideas don't matter, that they sort of are not a part of this, because many people assume that these types of crimes don't affect them. But we know that youth and young adults are participating in online spaces, they're banking. My niece consistently sends me Cash App requests for me to send her money for her activities, and she's 14. So they are using money, they are being financially independent. And so while we know that many youth and young adults are digital natives, they may have grown up with the technology. They may not, though, have an understanding of what those true risks comes when they are participating in a financial space, especially online, and how to maintain their safety. It's imperative for us as allied professionals, service providers, those that are providing support, to begin these conversations with youth and young adults. Prevention and intervention strategies are going to be tied together. And so when we think about strong financial literacy skills, we want to make sure that they are given the tools before they even become victims. And if they have become victims, understanding where they can go to receive help and support. When we talk about being financially literate, for many victims, especially those who are youth and young adults, financial literacy is just basic safety planning strategies. Financial literacy, safety planning, and developing good financial hygiene is going to be important for youth and young adults. But we also have to think about sort of what those intersections are as well. For those who are foster youth, those youth and young adults who English may not be their first language, for those who come from socioeconomic backgrounds that are at the margins, we have to ensure that they also have the tools and resources to maintain their finances, understand what financial fraud and exploitation and abuse looks like, and then strategies for mitigation. Because we often know that these intersections can be even more detrimental for these sorts of groups. The financial fraud or exploitation that youth and young adults may be experiencing can be a piece of a bigger issue of victimization and violence. So as we go into today's panel discussion, remember that youth and young adults have the right to be in online spaces. They have a right for financial security, and we as allied professionals, service providers, and those who work with youth have a due diligence to make sure that they're equipped to go out into the world, be in online spaces, and be safe to do so. So before we sort of start the conversation, I'm going to launch a polling discussion, and this is going to be one of those presentations where we're going to ask you to get your phones out or your computer. And let me stop share because you're looking at the wrong screen. There we go. And just a head nod from my presenters, you're seeing the poll? Correct. Perfect. So if you have your phone, scan the QR code, or if you'd like, copy that web link and enter that code. We want to hear from you. What are you hearing in the field around ways youth and young adults are experiencing financial fraud or exploitation? So we'll pause for just a moment to give folks a chance to put their answers in. Wonderful. So I've got some answers coming in. And I'm going to stop share so I can launch it. Perfect. So, and it's not displaying. I'm not sure why it's not displaying, but I'll go ahead and read those answers out. I'm seeing spam request, fraud on Facebook where they think they can get money, human trafficking. Yes, we know this to be true, where they will groom youth and young adults, parents using their child's name for credit card loans, housing, family members using a child's identity, online gaming, putting their parents' information for direct deposit, family members and adults taking advantage, having finances completely controlled by a partner, online gaming, teen dating violence. That's a great one. Debt from abusers, sextortion, and I think I see some in the chat. Cashing washed checks, payment apps, gaming, fake Indian tribal ID cards in Canada, gaming accounts. Perfect. So you all are seeing, it looks like now my thing wants to show, but nonetheless, here we go. So yeah, so we're seeing it happen in all types of spaces, right? Again, when I talk about foster youth, where their foster parents will open accounts in their name or use, in some cases, I've seen parents use their child's name to get a electric bill or to set up a rent payment. I've seen, again, a Cash App where a fraudulent company will say, if you give us $50 of your Cash App, you'll get 500 back. Using Facebook Marketplace, maybe I'm selling something online, a gaming system online, and it turns out to be a fraud. Someone asking for money through a gaming system, a game, those sorts of things. Sharing sort of Bitcoin or that sort of digital currency is another one. And so, yes, it sounds like for many of you, you're hearing this, but we also heard, I saw quite a few answers that people said they're not necessarily hearing youth and young adults talk about it. And that's not to say that that's not happening in your community, but it may be to say that maybe youth and young adults don't feel comfortable having that conversation. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means and how we can sort of talk about that. So I'll turn it over to you now, Rob. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Rachel. All right. So we're going to get started and get into kind of this panel discussion here. But first, a little source credibility. Let's introduce who we are, just so you know, you all have met Rachel already. I'm Rob Massio. I'm a director with FINRA and the FINRA Investor Education Foundation. And we partner with a lot of different organizations, but NCVC is one of those partners that we've had a great relationship with and are able to work and put out some of these webinars with them. I've been with FINRA for, gosh, I think it's been over 16 years. Most of my career has been on the investigative side. And for those of you that might not know who FINRA is the financial regulator. So we regulate brokerage firms and their employees. So when you think about stocks, bonds, that type of trading activity, that is what we regulate. We're a private not-for-profit organization. We are not a government agency. We are overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission to make sure we are doing the job that we were put in place to do. Now, I've been with the foundation, which is a subsidiary of FINRA, for just about 3 years. And my work with the foundation really focuses on financial fraud and financial exploitation, how to assist individuals, how to help individuals identify and spot red flags of fraud, and also research around financial fraud and exploitation. So with that being said, let me introduce you to Mel Trumpauer, who's another one of the partners that we do work with closely. Mel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. And thank you for including me on the panel. It's really nice to be here. I am the executive director of the BVB Institute for Marketplace Trust. That is essentially the 501c3 educational foundation of the Better Business Bureau. So we work with all of our BVBs across the United States and Canada, and fraud prevention is a huge part of our mission, obviously. We do a lot of different work. We collect data through our BVB Scam Tracker database. We work with partners on research, FINRA being one of them. We do a lot of consumer education work as well. Again, partnering with FINRA, we have a program called Fighting Financial Fraud, where we train trainers across the United States who go out in their communities and do fraud prevention workshops and so forth. We also do educational campaigns and a lot of other things. So this is a topic that's very, very important to us. And I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. Tracy, go ahead. Tell us who you are.
Okay, thank you, Rob, and thanks for including me on the panel as well. My name is Tracy Morris. I'm with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, a federal agency that regulates the banks. And we also have a mission to help get to ensure confidence in the banking system. And part of that is focused on financial education for consumers, making sure that they have positive banking relationships and just really have access to all the banking products. We have a free financial education program called Money Smart. We also train trainers who go out in their communities and teach financial education in the community to youth and young adults. We also teach K to 12 and young adults and older adults. Today, one disclaimer, anything that I say, these are my opinions and not those of the FDIC. But again, thank you for allowing me to be on the panel.
Awesome. Great. Rachel, anything you want to add before we move into our first question?
No, just thank you all. And if you're not familiar with the National Center, for those of you who are new to us, we are one of the nation's oldest victim serving organization. We have our Victim Connect hotline, helpline, which is a national helpline for anyone who has been a victim of crime whenever they've been a victim of crime. And so that's one of our important things that we always like to let people know, that it doesn't matter when you were victimized and it doesn't matter the type of crime. Our victim assistance specialist can provide you with support. We also have a DC-based victim hotline as well. And so just delighted to be here with you all. My background is in victim services, having worked in the domestic violence movement for many years, working around technology facilitated abuse and gender-based violence.
Awesome. So as you can all tell, we have a great panel of experts coming from all different backgrounds, all different experiences. And I know you all are going to get a lot of really helpful and interesting information out of this. And one of the things that I've really learned quickly working with Rachel and others as well is the intersection between various different types of crimes and groups that are targeted. There's often an overlap that sometimes we're not attuned to. So having a diverse panel group such as us, I think is helpful to be able to pull in some of those different backgrounds. So to start off, let's talk about why this is a topic that is relevant to the field. Why is this something that we're having a webinar about? Let's set the stage there. Why do we really need to bring youth and young adults into this conversation? And Mel, I'm going to start with you, and then Tracy will go to you. Rachel will let you kind of close up. I know you started to set the stage at the beginning. So Mel.
Great, thanks, Rob. So yeah, it's a really good question, right? It's really important to start off at a young age with the knowledge you need to spot and avoid scams. It's critical to building a financially stable future. And for minors, for those who are under 18, it's important for parents and guardians to understand how to put protections in place for those young adults, and to learn how to talk to them about how to protect themselves. Just a little bit of information from BBB collects a lot of data. And I will say we don't collect scam data from minors at this point. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to share today is our youngest age group is 18 to 24. But it is relevant, right? And so one of the things we're seeing is obviously young people are more confident. And Rachel mentioned this earlier. They're more confident than their older counterparts in conducting transactions online. They feel very comfortable trying new things, trying new online technologies that are evolving. and that's fine. But our data is indicating that we've seen a rise of online scams that have gone up 87% since we started collecting data in 2015. So the predominant place where where scammers are targeting people are online. And that's important for us to understand when we talk about young people, because that's where they spend a bulk of their time. The other thing to share about that is that according to our research, online scams are riskier, meaning by our definition, people are more likely to lose money when they're targeted by an online scam. So it is really, really critical for us to help young people understand the risks of being online, whether they're on social media, a gaming platform, even a search engine, or even just having their phones with them. With a phone, you can, as you all know, you can be targeted at any time and any place. And the one thing I want to mention here is that it's really important to understand when we first started collecting data, we published a report called the Invulnerability Illusion. That was published back in 2016, but it's still relevant today. And what we found is, based on previous research that was backed up by our own survey research, that there's strong evidence of optimism bias, right? Individuals tend to believe that everyone else is more vulnerable than they are. And that applies to young people as well. And we found that the bulk of people viewed scam victims through a distorted lens. They thought that they were, older, that they were alone, that they were very gullible, not very smart. But our research finds that that's not the case at all, right? That's what some people have thought, but we find that everyone is at risk. And that some of our research found that the younger you were and the more educated you were, you actually had a stronger chance of losing money, believe it or not. So this was surprising research back then. I think it's still surprising to some people today, but we've spent a lot of time since then trying to make sure that we're reaching everybody, to let everyone know everyone is vulnerable to this. And no matter what age you are or what your, how knowledgeable you feel about technology, you're still at risk, and you still need to stay on top of what's going on the online world. And I'll talk a little bit later about this, but one last thing to mention is that we did find in our research, and this is research that Rob mentioned that we did with the FINRA Foundation, knowledge is protective, right? So if you have an understanding, either in general or even specific details about scams, you do have a chance of avoiding losing money in the future. So sharing that knowledge with them is really critical. So thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, and I think those are really, really great points. I mean, first, we know people are spending an increased amount of time online, and it's going to continue to move in that direction where more and more time is spent online. Where there's now conversations about spending time in the metaverse, and things are just going to continue to move in that direction, I would anticipate. And one of the challenges is, how do you reach individuals that think that they're safe, right? Nobody wants the messaging, the fraud prevention messaging or the assistance until it's too late, because people have that view where, oh, well, there's a reason it happened to that person and it's not going to happen to me. And I know there's been, Mel mentioned research that they had done, but there's been countless different studies that touch on that same kind of principle in various different aspects. But it's really hard to reach individuals that think that they're safe or that they're smarter than the scammer. And with that, Tracy, I'm gonna hand it over to you and have you weigh in some of your thoughts as to why this is an important topic.
Okay, so at FDIC, we approach things from the ground up. Let's build a good financial education base, which will help prevent financial fraud in the future. If you're armed, you know what you're doing, you're less likely to become a victim. Financial literacy is the ability to use knowledge and skills to manage financial resources effectively. Recent studies, including those by FINRA, have found that more than half of adults don't have the knowledge to manage their money, and it's a stress factor. Another study shows that 1/3 of American families do not have only 1/3 have an emergency fund, And 78% of respondents in a career builder survey conducted in 2017, those respondents said that they are living paycheck to paycheck, and only 2 in 5 adults keep a budget. Without learning basic financial concepts, this trend is likely to continue for our youth and young adults. They're more likely to be vulnerable to misinformation that can have negative short and long-term impacts on their financial well-being. In its 2017 study, the National Report Card on State Efforts to Improve Financial Literacy in High Schools, Champlain College graded each state and the District of Columbia on their financial education. Only 5 states received an A, however, 27 states were graded either C, D, or F. But we know financial education works. In a National Endowment for Financial Education, NEFI-funded study, students in states with state-mandated personal finance graduation requirements make better decisions about how to pay for college. So we know that our schools are failing in terms of financial education, and you who work with youth victims, you're in a position where you can help your victims really understand the risks about financial products, how to stay safe online, and how to help recover from financial fraud. Thank you.
Perfect. And it's one of those topics where you almost have to attack it from all angles, right? You need to have preventative messaging. You need to have okay, so it happened, now what? But you have to have that strong foundation of financial literacy to be able to understand that, by learning the basics of financial literacy and by trying to position yourself in a way where you're not financially fragile and you're able to move forward as you continue to age, and as you're spending more and more time online, you can be in a position to protect yourself simply by having that basic knowledge. And it's a challenge. It's fragmented state by state, so each state has its own different type of requirements when it comes to financial education for youth and young adults. And that's an area that there's a few organizations that are looking to tackle that and change the way that might work. And I know the FINRA Foundation, we do a lot of work in the financial education space as well, trying to reach different communities and different individuals with that kind of base educational effort. Rachel, I know you've got such a great background that's different, I know very different than mine, and I'd love to hear some of your perspective on this.
Sure, and I think it's important for us to sort of remember to sort of that there is a misconception that youth and young adults and even children can't sort of understand these sorts of heavy topics and these sorts of conversations. But I think, age appropriate is always the way to go. And especially when we're thinking about youth and young adults who are experiencing victimization as well. So the financial fraud, the exploitation may only just be one small piece of a bigger sort of victimization that they may be experiencing, or if their parent is experiencing intimate partner violence or any of those sorts of things. And so we have to sort of set the stage to say that they can be a part of these conversations and they can lead us in that. I know one of the stories I always tell is my nephew. He was about 5 at the time, and he was begging me to play with my phone. And I said, no, my phone battery was dying. Don't do it. So I had left my phone on the table, and I come back and he had somehow gotten into my phone. Well, I have a lock on my phone. Well, he had seen me do the pattern and like breathed on my phone and was able to match the pattern that I did. And he was 5, right? So he was able to sort of break the code in that way. I always call him little baby genius. And he was able to break the code in that way. And so, youth and young adults and kids, they're using technology. They're in these spaces. They're gaming. And so we cannot in good conscience allow for them to be in these spaces without giving them the tools and strategies to be in these spaces in a safe and meaningful way. And so it's very important to remember that. I think the other piece to remember, and it looks like someone may have put something in there as well, is that it is often difficult to have these conversations with youth and young adults when you as an adult don't feel like you have your finances together. I remember doing financial empowerment curriculum training as a domestic violence advocate, and I was not financially savvy at all. And I was trying to have these conversations with folks in violence. And I felt like a hypocrite. I felt like I can't give you really good advice because I don't know what I'm doing either. And so for many adults and service providers who are talking to youth and young adults, they feel like they don't know where to start. How do we, tell someone how to budget? How do we teach someone how to budget? What does a budget even look like? And then when you factor in the way in which sort of millennials and full disclaimer, I am a millennial, but millennials and Gen Z sort of had to come of age in a time where, I think it was Tracy or Mel who talked about like there is no sort of nest egg or sort of savings, and sort of folks are struggling to do that. Well, this generation and our generation came up during the housing crisis, the 2008 recession. We've experienced so many types of wars. The student loan crisis. We won't get into that because I know that can be a polarizing conversation. But all of these things sort of came about while we were coming of age. And even now, this next generation is coming of age. And so those conversations we have to start having at a young age, because many of us now are adults and we're sort of trying to figure out. The first time I really read my loan paperwork was the day I graduated college, but I had signed a loan for thousands of dollars, right? No one taught me what to look for. No one taught me how to read that information. And so it's our duty, especially as service providers, to really sort of get into the nitty gritty of what this means, while also, again, understanding that many youth and young adults, for those of us who provide victim services, are coming to us with other types of backgrounds. They're going to come to us with a trauma. They're going to come to us with the lived experiences that they had. And those lived experiences, those traumas, especially, again, those who may be from another country, they may be from an immigrant community, they may be from a rural town. Talking about finances, talking about money with someone who's not in the family could be frowned upon. And so how do we sort of bridge that gap? How do we sort of have that conversation in a way that resonates with them?
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. And there's been quite a few comments here in the chat, just a lot of people commenting about how, some schools have different kinds of financial literacy programs, some don't. It's very different state by state. And I think that's what we're seeing across the country. It is different, and it is based on the specific state that you're in. And then of course you have the charter schools versus the public schools versus the private schools. So there is a lot of variation among the type of financial education that individuals receive. So at the very beginning of this, Rachel launched a poll, and you all shared with us kind of some of your thoughts. But I'm interested in hearing the panelists' thoughts on some of the basic ways that we're seeing youth being victimized in our respective roles. Tracy, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay. Well, first, I recently read an article about the surge in online scams. And while the over 60 crowd still lose the most to online scams, those folks younger than 19 are reporting more and more. According to the FBI's 2021 crime report, nearly 15,000 scams were reported by people under the age of 19. These scams resulted in a little more than $101 million of loss. While this demographic continue to report the least amount of scams, the overall increase is just astounding. In 2017, the number of reported scams were just over 9,000 with $8.2 million. So you can see just in 4 short years going from 8.2 to 101 million. That's phenomenal. And they experienced the largest of any group during that same time period. Researchers are studying the correlation of social media and technology, which we've heard Mel discuss, to the increase in financial crimes targeting these young adults. And it's surprising that youth are considered to be so tech savvy, yet they're the ones who are falling victim to these online scams, just as in this pretty much the same ratio as older adults. Identity fraud affects as many as 1 in 50 US young people. And this is a crime that often goes undetected for years, since the person isn't aware of the fraud until they go to obtain credit or to open a checking or savings account. And it's only at those times when they find out that someone has opened an account in their names. And the FBI, and I think we saw in chat, sextortion. The FBI reports an increase in the number of sextortion scams, again with the teen and younger children population. While more young victims are reporting scams to the authorities, one has to wonder what percentage of scams are being reported. And I would be concerned that 15,000 may just be the tip of an iceberg, because they're not all scams are being reported. So, Rob?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And that's not just for youth and young adults, right? We see that in all types of reporting, right? The numbers that we know are likely just a fraction of the actual crimes and exploitation and fraud that is occurring out in the marketplace. There's been quite a few people that have talked about on the chat about financial knowledge and how they're new to a financial coaching type of role and something that they're struggling with. And I'm going to put in a shameless plug for some of the work that we have on our FINRA website. We do have some really great tools. So FINRA, Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. If you go to our website, finra.org/investors, we have a whole suite of different resources available for investors, even including things that touch on budgeting, that goes all the way up into securities type of transactions. So there's a lot of really helpful information on there. And I know there's a lot of other organizations that have the same. We're going to get into some of that in a little bit, but I just wanted to throw that plug out there for anybody who's looking for a little bit of a refresher. We have even courses available on our website. And of course, all of our information, our resources, unbiased, free of charge. So feel free to leverage that.
I put the link to that in the chat for folks. I know people were asking for it. So,
Awesome.
And then just a reminder to our panelists, folks are asking us to explain our acronyms. We use so many acronyms in our work. So just a moment of pause. And if there are acronyms that folks missed that you would like us to go back over, go ahead and put that in the chat or the Q&A so we can make sure you know what we're talking about.
Yes, we're so used to using these terms that sometimes we forget to explain them. So that's a great reminder to us. Mel, so I want to hear a little bit from you. What you're seeing as kind of the basic ways that youth are becoming victimized. I know you've got a suite of information that you're able to leverage. So curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that one of the key message points, I think, for young people and for everyone really is to understand that scammers change their tactics all the time. And that's part of why we need to stay abreast of what's happening. They change their tactics based on the news. We saw lots of scams happen following the pandemic, for example. They change it based on new technologies, new offerings. And so that's why it's so important to stay on top of this stuff. One of the things I was going to mention again is just to reiterate what I mentioned earlier about the tech scams, that they're on the rise in a big way. We saw a huge increase since we started collecting data. They've gone up from 11% of what we saw back in 2015 to 30%. But that isn't even the most concerning thing about tech scams, is that, yes, that's a significant rise, but we found that that was the method of contact that had the biggest monetary loss for folks. So we found that folks who lost money when targeted by a tech scam lost median dollar loss of around $800. That's on average, which was the highest of any other way that they were being targeted, including internet messaging and online classified. So again, talking to young people about their phones and just being aware, because it's one thing to be online and go to your computer and be thoughtful about, okay, I'm online now, let's be safe, but you carry that phone with you. It's it's part of who you are, right? And so I just want to reiterate that again, because that we're finding there's this huge increase of scammers finding ways to lure you online by texting you or whatever it is. So that's an important point. The other thing I'll just mention real quick, we do every year, and you can find this on our website, it's what we call our Scam Tracker Risk Report, and we take essentially 1 year of data every year. So, and we release it in March. So our new one will be coming up in March 2023. But essentially, we're trying to really identify trends and what's going on in the scam landscape. And so for this past year, for 2021, what we saw for the youngest age groups that were reporting scams to us, that the three riskiest scams, and when I say risky, I mean we combine three factors: the volume, so how often people are being targeted, how likely it is they lose money to that particular scam type, and then how much money, if they do lose money, how much money they're losing to it. That's how we identify what a risky scam is. And the three riskiest scams that we identified last year were online shopping scams, essentially. And again, we mentioned social media. That's a big part of what's going on. We're finding that people are falling prey to online purchase scams, what we call shopping scams, and they're not even shopping, right? They're just passively going on social media and browsing social media. And so it is a risk just by browsing. And then the second one I'll mention is employment scams. When you're trying to go find that job, they come at you and offer you a job that's just too good to be true. It's remote, pays really well. And the red flag for us here is they don't require a whole lot of specific skills. And that's so they can target more people with it. That was number two. And then the third one, which was a shock to us, was investment scams. That was the first time we ever saw that really even show up in the top three risky scams for young people. And we can talk about a little bit more about that later, but we suspect that had a lot to do with the rise in cryptocurrency and what was going on over the last couple of years with that. So those are just some of the key findings BVB's been finding related to scams targeting younger people.
Mel, could you expand a little bit on shopping scams and what you're seeing and hearing, what exactly those are and what they might look like?
Yeah, so shopping scams, essentially it's a deal that's something that, again, it goes back to that red flag of something that looks too good to be true, right? And so you're online. One of the things we're seeing happen a lot is you're browsing social media, and you know these scammers also have access to the marketing tools, right, to understand what you're shopping for. So that's another key thing here. So you go to you go and you look at a pair of red shoes, you've got cookies, you know how it works. That marketer knows how to follow ads, target ads to you. After that, you start to see ads. And so we're seeing a lot of folks that, they know you're looking for the red shoes. So they give you an offer you can't refuse, and you go online and you pay for them. And of course they never come because it's fake. So it's leading you to a fake website. That's another thing that you can look at. If you're going to a new website that you've not been to before to make a purchase, look to see how long it's been up there. Because if it's a newer website that's been open in the last year, that's a red flag, right? That maybe this is a scammer that's just popped it up to try to sell stuff that they're never going to deliver. So that's really what we're seeing with online shopping scams, but it's really about those quick. So one of the things we say is don't make those quick purchases, right? Stop. If you find something and it feels too good to be true, stop yourself just for a moment and do a little bit of background research. Don't move forward. Don't quickly pay. It's so easy to just quickly pay for it. It's a great deal. Of course, there's lots of red flags. There's the other thing that you see online on social media is this: we're going out of business, right? 80% off, going out of business in the next 30 days. Go ahead and buy while you can. That's another red flag. So online shopping scams, just so you know, have been the riskiest scam for all age groups that we've seen in our data for the last 2 years. So since the pandemic, it makes up about 33% of all scams reported to our reporting tool. And so they're risky because you're more likely, you have about a 75% chance of losing money to those scams. So yeah.
And anybody can be a victim, right? I mean, it's not just youth and young adults. It's not just older individuals. And now, again, we're in a time where we're spending more time online. And Mel, I know some of your data stems from during the pandemic, right? So
Mhm.
where we physically were not leaving our houses, we were, in a sense, living our lives online. We were ordering food online, our groceries delivered. We'd have certain deliveries come to our doorstep that and as we're spending more time online and there's more push for social media and different apps to assist and make our lives, they're there to make our lives easier and more convenient, but they do open up opportunities for outside influence and for fraud and scams to kind of creep in. Rachel, anything you want to add on some of the things that you're hearing and seeing?
Sure, yeah. So someone put in the chat about devices. What if someone has access to someone's devices? And so that is its own webinar. But just in a short snippet, thinking about sort of what does that access look like? Because I think there is a lot of sort of misconception about how people can get access. And so first, what is the device? If it's a computer, definitely thinking about, did someone click on a fraudulent email link? And now they may have gotten spyware or stalkerware installed. Did they click? Someone mentioned about going onto a site, and I tell people all the time, don't use free Wi-Fi at Starbucks. Don't use free Wi-Fi at McDonald's, right? And so thinking about, did I log on with the Wi-Fi and now I'm going to my Wells Fargo app? And now my Wells Fargo app, my username and password have been compromised. And so it's sort of thinking through those sorts of things. If it's a phone, maybe I know oftentimes youth and young adults will develop relationships with folks that they've met online through gaming, through chat, through all of that. And so maybe I've shared my login information and now I have access to that person's sort of iCloud account or Samsung account. It's those sorts of things. It's, did I maybe inadvertently share information that I didn't know I was sharing? Oftentimes people say the thing about social media is you're supposed to be social, right? You're supposed to share. And so I may have shared something that got information out. And I think it's important too to remember again, sort of what does sharing look like, and how can we teach youth and young adults to share in a way that is honest and open, but also mindful of the dangers that could be out there, mindful of what it means when you give this sort of information. And oftentimes, for those of us who have done teen dating violence work, we know that when I talk to parents all the time, there's this common thread, and my mom said it all the time to me: I need to have access to your password. I need to know who you're talking to keep you safe. I want to make sure that you're not falling victim to things. My mom was very vigilant. But you know who else says that sort of thing? An intimate partner who may not trust that I am not cheating, or those sorts of things. And so it's really about helping youth and young adults identify what is a healthy relationship and what's unhealthy. What is something that is healthy to share with friends and family, and what's something that we just don't share because it could mean that our information gets compromised. But even if you, and I think this is important to remember, even if you take all of these steps, things can happen, right? I actually was at a training last week in Chicago and got a text message from Wells Fargo that said, do you recognize this company? And I said, I do not recognize that company. And my debit card had been compromised and I was out of the state. And so then I had a mild panic of, do I have any money when I can get home? I got to go to the airport. How do I fix this, right? And I do financial fraud work. So it means that, anyone can sort of be victimized. And luckily I had enough because it's happened to me before. My bank notifies me immediately. I was able to lock down my accounts and I knew what to do. And then I got a digital debit card and I was able to buy the overpriced $40 bag of Lay's potato chips in the airport. But those are sort of the things that we have to start talking to youth and young adults to say, it is okay if this has happened. Don't feel sort of, we can't victim blame. A lot of times in these sorts of crimes, especially for those who are experiencing other types of victimizations, we blame them for it, right? Well, you should have known better. Why did you click on that link? Why did you go to that website? You should have known not to talk to somebody on Roblox. You should have known all of that. And while, yes, maybe that's true, that does not mean we blame the victim. That does not mean we sort of put the onus back on them, because they're not the perpetrators of the crime. It is the person who chose to do it. And so, especially with youth and young adults who are trying to exert power, who are trying to, one of the things that I talk to people all the time about is, as a teenager, I had no real control in my life, right? Like, my mom was always telling me what to do. My coaches were telling me what to do. My teachers were telling me what to do. All the adults in my life were telling me what to do. I had no real control. And so for me, my social media was where I could control things. For those of you who remember MySpace, I was a MySpace kid. I was coding at like 12 and 13, and now do not have those coding abilities, but I was changing my page up. I had music. I had all of these things that I could do on my MySpace page because I could control that. That is what my little small immediate universe could do. And so it's important as adults, we sort of think about that and remember that youth and young adults may not even feel like they can come and talk to us, because they may feel like we, are gonna discipline them, or we're gonna rag on them, we're gonna blame them for what they're experiencing. And so we have to really set the stage, set the scene for them to feel comfortable to have these conversations with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. And so you started kind of touching on it, but I'm going to let you expand a little bit if you'd like. So what are some of the strategies that we can use to help protect youth and young adults?
Sure. I always start with being transparent and open. One of the things, especially for those of us who do victim services work, we often will have victims and survivors come and talk to us, and we never tell them the limitations of what we can do. And unfortunately, for many of us who are mandated reporters, if someone shares that information, and especially when maybe child abuse or elder abuse is involved, we have to report that. And so there has to be a way in which we can sort of allow for youth and young adults and kids to have these conversations with us in a safe way, but also letting them know the limitations of what we can and cannot do as a trusted adult, because we are mandated to report. And so that's the first thing. And then the second thing, and I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleagues, the piece about that is sort of, again, identifying where you can be transparent about yourself. I talk about this all the time with youth and young adults. And as much as I hate to say it, I am now not considered young anymore. Who knew, right? But I say, like, when I was your age, when I was, coming up, like, I made these mistakes. I did these things. And so it's talking about what you've experienced. It's talking about sort of how can I sort of help you navigate this journey and sort of build that relationship, build that trust, because that's going to be important, especially with teens and young adults, is building trust, because they're going to feel like, who can I talk to? Who can I turn to? Who's going to take what I say and sort of help me or judge me for making these choices? And so I'll start with those two.
Awesome. Tracy, let's turn it over to you. Interested to hear your thoughts, as well as, what can we do as advocates and as people supporting victims? How can we assist them?
Okay. Well, I think just knowing the different resources that are available in the case that when something does happen, obviously, if it's with a bank or a credit union, immediately call the bank and credit union to try to work with them. Bankers, there's a lot of laws that will help resolve some of the issues, but timely reporting of those issues is mandatory. You can't, let a problem linger. So work with the financial institution. If someone's opened a credit card, if someone's opened, let's say, opened an account in someone's name, those things, it's essential to raise awareness of those promptly. I would also think, because we're talking about youth and young adults, oftentimes they don't know that there's a problem until, especially with financial institution, unless they've pulled a credit report. And it's oftentimes they don't do that until they've gone to get a credit card. But anyone over the age of 13 can pull a credit report. And just we suggest that people pull those reports from annualcreditreport.com at least once a year, but they could be pulled more frequently than that. And that's like anyone's early warning system. It's like it lets you know you can pull your report if you've got something negative, or you've got something that shouldn't be on there, like you don't recognize, this is a credit card from using Rachel's Wells Fargo. Well, that's not my account. Well, bring that to light and get that straightened out sooner rather than later. And if someone goes to open an account at a bank or a credit union and they're denied a checking or savings account because they show up on a check systems report, meaning that they've had an account with a bank or credit union in the past, or at least one had been opened in their name, and they were not the one that opened it, someone did it in their name. Those are things, there's processes to get to resolve those, but they need to be done, it needs to be done early, it needs to be done in writing. And it's something that I think those are probably two of the key things that someone can do, is always, pull credit report, make it a habit of pulling the credit report at least once a year, if not more frequently.
Great, thanks, Tracy. Mel, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think I would just start by reiterating what Rachel was saying about making sure they have somebody they can trust. If something happens like this, that they have to reach out to, because that's one of the things we say to folks, is that when you feel like you've been targeted, reach out to somebody, friends or family, or somebody that you can trust to help walk you through what to do, and make sure that they're not feeling ashamed about it. You haven't made them feel embarrassed in any way, so that they will share this with you if it happens. That's such a critical piece of this. One little piece of research that we've seen, again, and it's in that exposed to scams research we did with the FINRA Foundation in Stanford, is that we found that those who engage with scammers in general and those who lost money expressed significantly higher feelings of loneliness. Specifically, losing money was associated with being more frequent feelings of being left out, lacking companionship, and being isolated from others. And I bring that up just as another thing to just know that that's a factor. If you're dealing with somebody who's feeling lonely, that may actually play into what's going on. And that's why it's absolutely critical that they have connections of people that they know, that they can reach out to if something happens, and can walk them through all the things that Rachel and Tracy have talked about, helping to get your phone back, get your computer looked at, whatever you need to do, looking at your identity, going through all those steps. I think that's really critical. The other thing I would say is that even at a young age, it's important to start knowing that reporting a scam is really critical, right? Making sure that, number one, it's really hard to get money back when you've lost money to a scam. However, you won't get it back if you don't report it, right? There's zero chance you'll get it back. So report it, number one, for that reason. And then number two, it helps other people, right? And it allows law enforcement and organizations like the Better Business Bureau to be out there and explaining the latest scam trends and what's going on, and sharing that information with other people. And so I say that because I do think that's a way to engage young people too. We found in the work that we're doing is when they feel like they can be part of the solution and actually reach out and help other people, their ears open up and they want to be more involved, not just in protecting themselves. They're really interested in protecting their parents and their grandparents. And so that's another message point that I think is really critical for young people, is reporting it is critical. You can actually help other people. And also just encouraging them to learn from this experience, learn from it, learn that you want to stay involved, that they should stay up to date on what's going on in terms of scam tactics and trends and so forth, so they can protect themselves later on. So that's all I'd add. Thank you.
And Rob, I just want to add a note there too, because I think, Mel, you bring up such a really good point about the reporting. And so reporting can be, the reporting is a lot of different options for reporting. And so I want to make sure that's clear for folks, because oftentimes, to your point, Mel, you talked about reporting to law enforcement, and I think that's a great step for folks who feel like that is, the best option for them. But there's other options: reporting to the FTC, reporting to, if it's through social media, if it's a Facebook scam, reporting to Facebook or Twitter, if they're playing a game, reporting it to Roblox. So many of these organizations have sort of standard, what they call community guidelines or terms of service, that some of these behaviors may actually violate that and can get them kicked off, can get them removed, can get them sort of can bring a recourse. And so again, for youth and young adults who may feel like maybe they're, again, oftentimes we've heard, did some research and found that many folks from immigrant communities don't feel safe. They think that if they report, they could be deported, or for folks maybe living with disabilities, if they report, they might be removed from their home. And so letting them know that there are these alternative ways to report, but all of these things matter, and they have to decide what's going to be best for them. And I think the other piece, again, to remember is, especially with youth and folks under 18, that reporting could trigger a child abuse case. It could trigger something else. And so that's important to note when we talk to youth and young adults and their guardian and what that means for them as well. And then the third point I want to talk about too is, and I'd love maybe for Mel or Rob or Tracy to weigh in on this too, is what if the trusted adult is the person perpetrating the crime, right? So in many instances, we see that the family member, the parent, has done the sort of fraudulent activity in the child's name. And so what does the child or the youth or the young adult, what sort of recourses can they take? What can they do? And what if that has happened years ago? What are those options?
Mhm. Well, I mean, those of course are very, very challenging situations. And I would say, one of the steps would be to loop in any type of authority that you can. So whether it's law enforcement, whether it's somebody, if it has to do, what other type of regulatory agency could you get involved, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the district attorney's office, whether it's the IRS or anything along those lines, getting them involved as quickly and as much as you possibly can. And again, reporting those not only to those agencies, but to other agencies. Adult Protective Services might be able to step in and help. But I'm interested to hear if any of the other panelists have ideas or thoughts on that as well. Tracy?
I agree, Rob. That's a very difficult situation to navigate. But again, if it's with someone opening accounts in the young person's name, they can always close those accounts out. They just show their ID. This is me. This is an account opened in my name that I did not open, whether it be a trusted adult or anyone else. And those accounts would have to be closed. So they should try that first, and then go to the credit reporting agencies and say, help me out here. This was opened in my name. This was not me. And the credit agencies would have to start repairing that credit report. But again, it's very difficult if a parent has opened up a credit card, then there are ramifications there, I think, and it needs to be, there's a holistic approach, but at a minimum with a financial institution account, it would have to be closed.
And simply even reaching out to that financial institution, I mean, making them aware of the concern and the activity that's going on can go a long way, because they are able to step in and they are able to possibly put controls onto the account or reach out to the authorities to help gather information, so they can be a resource to leverage as well. There's been a bit of chatter about the different online purchase scams and the rise of influencers that are pitching different products. Fake reviews is another thing that came up. You know, how can you sort through fake reviews? How can you look into a company to see how legitimate they are? And Mel, I know you've got some answers coming at us from Better Business Bureau. So we'll save you for last, and I'll see if Rachel, Tracy, either of you have any thoughts before I hand it over to Mel. All right, Mel, it's all you.
Yeah, those are great insights and questions. Obviously, Better Business Bureau is keeping track, right, of companies. You can actually go online at bbb.org and you can look at companies, and you could look at complaints, and you can look at all kinds of things about a company. And so finding out what's trustworthy and what's not is really critical. That's really at the heart of our mission as an organization. And so I would encourage you, when you're going online, and like I said, you go to a website that is new and you don't know, do some searching, right? You know, go to bbb.org. If it's a new business, bbb.org may not even have it. So there's other things like Trustpilot and other places you can go to get some insights about those companies, whether or not they're legitimate or not. There's a lot of things. The reviews question, that's another one that we have done research in our most recent research report. And all this is on our website if you want to look at it. It's marketplacetrust.org, bbbmarketplacetrust.org. And essentially what we found is don't rely on reviews to make a decision. Don't ever rely on reviews to make a buying decision. We did a quiz as part of our survey research last year, and we found that nobody was able to really tell the difference between a fake review and a real review. So it depends on where you go. Obviously, some organizations are much more diligent about, making sure that reviews on their websites are legitimate. But if you're on social media and you're looking at comments to see if people are commenting, just be very wary that those comments may be fake comments people are putting in there. And so those are all really important questions. And so I think the thing that we like to tell folks is start with trust, right? So just because you're doing a search on Google or you're on social media and you're browsing and it's taking you places, don't trust where it takes you. Just back up, find a place of trust, whether it's bbb.org to look at a business profile or some other place to find out if that business is legitimate, that website's legitimate. Take the time to do that before you go ahead and make a purchase. So
great. Thank you. And I know everybody, we're at time. I know this is a topic I think that we can continue talking about. The good news is that it is recorded, and we can maybe keep going for as long as the panelists have a little bit of time to continue for a couple more minutes, and totally understand if people need to drop off and check back in for the recording once it's released. I know there's a few different items that we want to continue to try and cover. The questions are coming in nonstop, so that's great. I love the level of interaction. It seems that this is definitely a topic that people are really interested in learning more about.
Yeah, and I've been seeing in the chat too, Rob, folks talking about what are some of those intervention strategies as well, because there's a lot of prevention. And I think that's really important to bring up as well. Again, I said it earlier, financial literacy is safety planning, and safety planning to me are intervention strategies, right? So can I lock down my account? Can I change my password? Can I no longer have access to the person who is perpetrating the crime? All of that those sort of beginning steps. And then when we think about, is the person an intimate partner? Is the person a family member? Some of those strategies may not work because, again, I live with that person. But really thinking about what are those fundamental advocacy core skills we already have as advocates that we can then apply to this situation. Just because the financial fraud is there doesn't mean that those advocacy skills are not the same, right? We might have to adapt them, we might have to adjust them, but they're still basic sort of, how do we help someone navigate this? What questions should we ask? What information does the person have access to? How did they get access to my cloud account? What does it mean when I purchase this t-shirt on this website today, but the website's down tomorrow? Do I need to put a lock on my account? Can, if somebody posted, which was a good question, if I'm under 18, can I put a freeze on my credit report? Can I put a freeze on my accounts? And so these are sort of those initial questions as advocates we're already going to start thinking about and thinking through when folks come to us who are experiencing this.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. And I just want to remind you all that you're more than welcome to reach out to us after the session. I know there's a lot of questions. Some of them coming in are pretty specific, and we're happy to help you out in any way that we can. And you're more than welcome to reach out to us after this program, and we can try and get you some of that specific information and resources and help that you might be looking for. Being mindful of everybody's time, I'm going to kind of try and start to wrap us up here and let the panelists kind of take a moment to cover anything that they haven't covered, and just give us some parting thoughts. And Tracy, we'll start with you. I know you haven't really had a chance to talk much about the Money Smart program, which is such a great program. So let me turn it to you to touch on that and any other parting closing thoughts you might have.
Okay, there's been a lot of great information. One thing when we talk about intervention, I'd like to bring up our Money Smart curricula, which was first developed for adults in 2001. And after that, because of its popularity, we started launching other versions of that, one for older adults, which might be helpful for the folks on the call. And then also in terms of that, for this particular audience, for this webinar, we have created the Money Smart for Young People series, which consists of 4 age-appropriate curricula, which has lesson plans for educators along with guides for parents and caregivers. I know that someone on the call asked the question about what can schools do? Well, Money Smart for Young People, it's pre-K to grade 2, grades 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. It's never too early to start teaching our children, youth, and young adults about financial education. These include lesson plans for teachers, and they're also aligned to the Common Core standards, which I think is important to everyone. We're currently working on a new release for the Money Smart for Young Adults curriculum that targets ages 16 to 24, and that should be released by the end of 2022. That particular curricula can be taught by anyone that has an interest. We have an instructor guide, participant guide, and a slide deck. If anyone on the call would like to teach Money Smart, we offer Train the Trainer webinars periodically. Everything can be found on our website at fdic.gov/Money Smart. There'll be a lot of information there. All the curricula focuses on basic financial education topics, including banking products, making the most out of income and expenses, creating spending and savings plans. I noticed someone had mentioned they don't know how to make a budget. Well, a lot of us don't until we're actually go through some training and see some of that. Realizing that fraud happens, each curricula includes a module or lesson on identity theft, from steps to take to help prevent identity theft to steps to take after someone's been a victim. And in those modules, the identity theft modules, there's a lot of information that one can do. Biggest thing is dispute inaccurate information on credit reports, placing a freeze on credit reports, communicating with those creditors, and making sure that they understand that it's not the victim who opened up that account. All of those are instructor led. And again, we have Train the Trainer sessions. I'd also like to mention that we've got a new game product. It's How Money Smart Are You? It's 14 games and resources that relate to everyday financial education topics. And although they're geared to adults, the 16 and 20 to 24-year-old population would also get a lot out of that. And again, there is one module on protecting your identity and other assets. So again, to find out more about any of our curricula, it's fdic.gov/MoneySmart. Everything is free, downloadable. And also we have a Money Smart Alliance made up of community-based organizations and bankers. Please reach out to bankers to help with your financial education needs. That's part of their mission, is to help in their communities. So if you have anyone that that you would like to teach financial education to, and you can either, perhaps do it yourself, or again, reach out to one of the our Money Smart Alliance members or to a local banker. So again, if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me, and I'm sure Rachel will have that information, or just go to the Money Smart website and there's a link there to my colleagues.
Yes, it looks like folks put that in the chat, and so grateful for that. And we just want to remind folks, we're going to send out all of the resources after the webinar, and I know you all are eager to get them, but want to make sure that we have them all compiled for you so you're not having to piecemeal it together. So give us a little time and we'll make sure you get the right information.
And I'm gonna just do a plug as well for FINRA. So we have smart investing courses that are geared towards older individuals as well as youth and young adults. We also have a partnership with American Library Associations where we have different programming and information. It's called a Thinking Money for Kids program. There's some online interactive components. We'll include that in the resources as well. And FINRA Foundation, we recently launched a partnership with Girl Scouts of USA as well, which is another way that we're trying to get out in the community and educate youth and young adults. But with that, Mel, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you share with us some of your last closing thoughts, anything you want to cover. I know we've had a lot of discussion, and I think there's plenty more that we could have, but being mindful of everybody.
We could definitely go longer for sure. There's a lot to say, but it's been a really great discussion, and I'm grateful to be here with everyone. I keep forgetting to mention, I've mentioned BBB Scam Tracker research, but I'm not sure I mentioned our tool. Obviously, we have our main website, which is bbb.org, but Scam Tracker is a platform that is a reporting platform, but it's also what we call a prevention platform for folks. So for example, if you get an email that looks suspicious and you want to check to see if anyone else has reported it, you can go to Scam Tracker and actually put the email in and see if somebody else has reported that scam or not. You can do it with a phone number, you can do it with a URL of a website. So there's all different ways. We just launched a brand new version of Scam Tracker last week. So if you would, it's a great tool to have at your fingertips. It's bbb.org/Scam Tracker if you haven't heard of it before. And again, it gets back to that importance of reporting, a scam so that we can share that with other folks. The only other thing I would mention again is we have BBBs in local communities all over. And so I guess if feel free to reach out to your local Better Business Bureau in your community. Those are folks who are doing lots of fraud prevention trainings in your community. Again, a lot of times through the Fighting Financial Fraud program that we do with the FINRA Foundation, they know your community really well. So not only do they know fraud prevention, they know your community. They're part of the community. They know what's going on. So feel free to connect with them at any time. And the only other thing I would add that I didn't get to mention is one of the things we are spending a lot more time around is trying to understand how to better engage young people with fraud prevention information, and that is to just understand, what does that messaging look like, where do we reach them, and storytelling is kind of critical. So again, remember that telling stories, sharing stories of what's happened to their peers is actually a really, really powerful way to explain to them, not only are you vulnerable, but here's how this person dealt with this. And so I just want to leave you with that idea that again, it's not just sharing data, it's sharing true stories about people their own age so that they can really identify with this. So again, thank you for having me. It was a great discussion. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. Rachel, you want to bring us home, close us out?
Yeah, I think my counterparts did a fabulous job, and I, appreciate you all for attending and your such thoughtful questions. And I'm going to round up the questions in the Q&A in the chat, and we'll be getting with our experts to see if we can get some of those answered, because I want to make sure you all know how to help victims and survivors, especially youth and young adults. So thank you all very much, and we will, just one last plug, we will be sending the recording and all the materials after this. Give us about a week or so to get everything put together, and be on the lookout. If you're not part of our listserv here at the National Center, get on that listserv. You'll be able to see when we're hosting another webinar. We're going to do our Taking Action webinar at the end of the year. So if you want to attend that and learn more about financial fraud and exploitation, feel free to look out for that. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.